If you haven't read the book, The Hiding Place, I highly recommend it. You really should. It tells the story of the Ten Boom family who hid Jews from the Nazis before and during World War II. Now, it's a difficult book to read, but in the whole time, I asked myself, would I be able to suffer like this for the sake of Christ and following after him? Yet it's also an important book for Christians to read, especially those who have grown up in comfort like we have. Even what we're in right now is nothing compared to what the Ten Boom family and other Christian families went through as they opposed Hitler in the best way that they could. In one part of the story, there's a part where the father, Caspar Ten Boom, has been caught and he's standing before the Gestapo. An officer looks him over and sees that he is far too old to go to a camp. So he gives Caspar a choice. If he will promise not to give the Nazis any more trouble by hiding Jews, he can go home, quote, to die in his bed. Now, Caspar has an easy out here, but instead he tells the Gestapo that he will show the love of Christ to anyone who comes to his door. He gave up comfort in order to follow Christ. Now, we're still following the story of the Exodus here, and we're just in the beginning of the story. In the middle of chapter 2, Moses is grown up, and he knows that God has called him to be the one who saves the people, the Jewish people, from Egypt. He knows that somehow. Verse 11 says that he looked on his people, which in the Hebrew means to look on them with compassion and love, and he tried to help them. Yet that was like Caspar standing up to the Gestapo. In fact, the author of Hebrews tells us in chapter 11, verses 24 to 26, by faith, Moses, when he was grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to be mistreated with the people of God than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. He considered the reproach of Christ greater wealth than the treasures of Egypt, for he was looking forward to the reward. Moses had a bright future in Pharaoh's court. He was raised in the court. According to Acts chapter 7, he was, quote, mighty in word and in deeds. He had the life of luxury before him, and yet he gave all of that up in order to be with his people. The author of Hebrews tells us, quote, again, he considered the reproach of Christ greater than the wealth or the treasures of Egypt. Now, we might wonder how he knew that. How did he consider the reproach of Christ? Well, Moses knew a lot more than we actually give him credit for knowing. He knew about the promised Redeemer from the promises that God gave to Abraham. He just didn't know his name yet. And Moses placed his faith in those promises, in that Redeemer, and therefore he rejected the life of luxury that Pharaoh's court offered him. He knew that suffering with God's people would ultimately be better than all the treasure and wealth that Egypt could offer him. Like Caspar, he chose God, to follow God over his own comfort. Now why? Why would he choose to follow God over his comfort? Why would he choose to suffer in this life? Why should we choose that? Well, Moses knew that there was a reward coming, the author of Hebrews tells us. He knew that that reward was coming, and it was life with God himself. It's like the concept of delayed gratification, put ultimately to its ultimate test. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? The simplest way of explaining it is you offer a child one piece of candy that they can have right now. But if they can wait an hour, they can have 3 pieces of candy. So the child has to look at the promised reward and what he has right now and weigh those against each other, weigh something greater in the future against instant gratification. This is what Moses has to do. It's what we all have to do. The reason the reproach of Christ is better than all the wealth of Egypt is that the things of this world are nothing compared to what Jesus has for us coming in the new heavens and in the new earth. All the wealth of Egypt is like taking a piece of candy right now when we could wait and have the whole candy store in the future. Sure, the now seems more satisfying because it's right now. It's very tangible to us, but it's only satisfying for the moment. The treasure that Jesus offers is forever in a new, perfect creation, and nothing can bring us more satisfaction than that. Moses knew that, Caspar knew that, so they're able to wait instead of taking the candy offered to them in the moment. Yet how can we do that right now, today? Well, again, it's because this story points us to Jesus and how he secured that future reward for us. You see, if it were up for us to earn it, then it would be better to take what we can get now because we can't earn it. But it's not up to us to earn it. Yes, Jesus earned it, and it's guaranteed for all who accept Jesus as their Lord and Savior. And we can know that because Moses is a picture of Jesus for us. Even right here, Moses lived in luxury as royalty. He had everything he could ever want. He could get anything he wanted. Yet he gave all of that up, becoming like a slave, because he felt that God's call on his life and he loved his people enough to follow that call. Now, does that sound familiar at all to you? It should, because it's what Jesus did, as Paul tells us in Philippians 2. He is God of the universe, which means he was even greater than any king on earth. And he gave all of that up to become lower than a servant because he loved his people and loved them enough to follow God's call on his life. The God who did that for us, we can trust to give us the reward that he's promised of a new creation. That's why Casper could choose to go to a death camp. He knew his Savior had something far better waiting for him in the future. So what do we need to give up to follow Christ? What is it that God is asking you to give up, even now? Whatever it is, it's worth it. Because the new heavens and the new earth are worth far more than all the treasures of Egypt or the treasure of the world could offer us. So you guys think about that. I'll see you tomorrow.